Right, what's going on, guys? Now, I've just seen that Moussa Diaby is about to make a £50 million switch to the Saudi League. Um, bit of a shock, considering he was meant to be the big marquee sort of signing for Aston Villa, and within a year he's already gone to the Saudi League. So it's a shock in that respect, but in the respects that it's on the back of his season he had last year, it's not a shock at all. Um, it just hasn't worked. Let's be honest. I think Moussa Diaby to Villa, the year he had, it didn't really work. For the hype that was around him. He certainly wasn't a flop. Certainly wasn't a flop. I think anyone calling him a flop is probably going a little bit too overboard. But I think in terms of what the Aston Villa fans and the Premier League in general was supposed to be expecting from Moussa Diaby, he didn't really put in the performances that justified the hype. And I think for that reason, I don't think Aston Villa will miss him too much. But I don't think his performances were bad enough to call him a disastrous signing. Otherwise, the Saudi clubs wouldn't be basically giving Villa their money back for him, which they are. I can't remember what they bought him for originally, but they're going to get more or less their money back because he's still a very good player. But sometimes good players just don't suit certain clubs. And I think you look at Leon Bailey. Leon Bailey definitely had a much better season than Diaby did. And it took Leon Bailey a lot of time for him to properly get settled as a Villa player. And you never know, if Diaby had stayed for another year, perhaps he would have grown with Villa. But they've chosen to get rid of him. Maybe just Emery doesn't fancy him. So it's definitely a shock in that respect, but it wasn't a great season. It was one of these guys where because if you remember last year, like teams like Arsenal were massively wanting this guy, and they were really behind possibly bringing in Moussa Diaby. So I was really intrigued to see how we'd get on at Aston Villa, but it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked for what Villa were expecting from him, but he certainly wasn't terrible. But yeah, I think it's about 50 million they're going to recoup for him. So fair play to them. So they would have lost Douglas Luiz, they would have lost Diaby. I don't think this one is to do with financial fair play either. I think they've just hit the jackpot that they're getting 50 million for him. I don't think they had to sell him, but yeah, because he hasn't really done as well as perhaps they would have thought when they signed him. I think they just think, do you know what? Why not? And it's a good deal if Moussa Diaby wants a nice, decent paycheck for a couple of years. He can go to Saudi Arabia, earn his money, and come back. It's what everyone seems to be doing these days. I always find it's the league that players go to when they either need to make a quick paycheck or they just are washed up as footballers. I don't think Moussa Diaby's like that. I think him and Ruben Neves will be back in the Premier League soon. I think they're just getting their money, and then they'll be back very soon. I think it's the only reason players really go there in their 20s, just to get money. So it's a fair play to Moussa Diaby. But for Aston Villa, I'm sure they'll look for someone else to replace him. I think they're looking at João Felix. I think he'd be a decent signing, especially in the number 10 with Watkins up front. Watkins can't play up front on his own. He needs someone with him. I think Bailey's done it sometimes. I think they tried Diaby there. If they can play Felix with Watkins, well, that could be a great signing. That really could. But yeah, Moussa Diaby about to leave Aston Villa. What do you guys think? Are you disappointed, or do you feel it was the right thing? I think it's the right thing. I think for both parties, it just makes sense. But yeah, I'm sure Villa will definitely look to use that money and strengthen very wisely.